Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk to Sohom Paul, who is a Salesforce APM. Soham just graduated from UCLA, majoring in computer science, and is now a Salesforce APM full-time. So, Soham, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're currently working on?
Sure. So quick clarification, double majored in statistics and economics, but don't worry, it totally happens, especially with APM programs. I think, let's see, so rewinding just a little. So I was born in New Jersey, lived there for the first 10 years of my life. And then after fifth grade, I actually moved to India, where I lived for about 7 years with my family. So that was sort of an interesting experience. I moved to Bangalore, India, which is the Silicon Valley of India. And basically, I did my middle school and high school there, applied to college from there, and had this really sort of interesting experience, juxtaposing, my individualistic American ideals and my collectivistic Indian ideals. And growing up, within a completely different, country, I was actually part of a boarding school. So I saw my parents maybe like 3 times a year because I was living basically as a yearly boarder in this place at the age of 10, completely new country that I'd only visited in the summers, but now I was like living full time in. So it was kind of interesting. I learned how to be sort of independent early on in my life, and there are like a few major lessons I had from India. I think one of the main ones was like the importance of being culturally grounded. I really loved my time there because I learned more about my people. I learned more about my culture, which sort of like helped me sort of shape my moral compass and turn me into the person that I am today. And then the second main thing, which sort of leads a lot into product, was I saw the massive sort of wide scale, impact of technology on people. So when I was in India, there was the mobile revolution going on. It went from, high tech executives within, these, big companies in India to people who are like rickshaw drivers or auto drivers or even cleaners having mobile phones. And I saw firsthand sort of the impact that was happening, as the internet, as 3G and stuff took off. The second big thing I remember, which is really prominent, was Ola Cab actually taking off, which is the Uber competitor in India. And it was just really interesting seeing how that technology sort of adopted and how that was changing the entire face of the taxi industries and even the auto industries that were sort of impacted by that. So that's what I sort of learned in my time there, and it really shaped me into who I am, and it made me really entrepreneurial. I think when I ended up at UCLA, I was I knew sort of the impact technology could have on people, so I was really excited to learn economics and learn statistics and find different ways that I could help businesses, and that's led to sort of like this slew of sort of internships. I was actually a product intern at MIT in my summer freshman year. And Philip, to answer your question on how I got into product, I basically just stumbled into it. I was essentially just a TA for one of MIT's newest online entrepreneurship courses. It was like the second year that I was running, and I noticed on my first day, basically my task was to help students who were finding some of the MIT entrepreneurial concepts a little challenging, and maybe every week posting on YouTube, hosting some office hours, things like that. But I soon realized that, we had like 30,000 students in the first year it ran and only like 12 comments. And I realized that, we didn't know what our students and basically what our customers were thinking and what feedback we got. So I religiously spent time sort of sending out emails, getting on calls with students and figuring out what we did right, what we did wrong. And soon, I made some, huge improvements to the course and made it one of the highest rated courses in edX. I think, there were like over 350 reviews by the time I was done, and had like a 4.5 star rating, which is wonderful. So saw sort of the impact that I could create by doing producty things. And at that time, I didn't know it was product, but making new friends who were actually incoming PMs at other great companies when I was in school and when I was doing my internships. I realized that what I'd done was very product focused, kind of consumer ed tech focused, and that's what made me realize that this is what I wanted to do. I loved it, and I was really excited to sort of started my journey towards there. Now fast forwarding, now I'm an APM at Salesforce. We have 3 8-month rotations. I'm actually on the Einstein platform, which is Salesforce's unified AI platform solution, and I'm learning a ton about what it means to be a platform PM. I've realized small things like a switch to freemium looks so small, right? Like a customer just flipping a button saying, hey, I want to be a freemium user now, but it has such a huge impact on our platform, right? Like, how do we scale to that many, customer use cases? How do we sort of change the architecture? How do we sort of, question some of our decisions of how our platform was built and how we need to sort of change it to make sure we can handle that scale? Things like that are what I'm learning. And then, more specifically, I'm working on a new bias detection mitigation product. Super excited for that. Been really interested in AI ethics recently. I've been here for about 3 months, and yeah, I mean, making some huge strides there and asking some philosophical questions. So yeah.
No, that's definitely interesting. But Soham, that was awesome to hear it. Super interesting background. Now, it seemed like you really knew that you wanted to do product management early on, like after your freshman internship. Now, obviously, all these programs are super competitive. APM Salesforce, I think, is like less than 10 people, thousands of applicants. So how did you think about that? Like, did you position your next internships, the classes you took, your majors, to really set you up for that competitive atmosphere? Or did it just kind of naturally happen?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's a combination of sort of naturally stumbling into something and while stumbling into it, realizing that, you really want to do this, so you get a little bit more strategic. So, kind of rewinding a little into, my experience at MIT, I was doing some consumer product stuff, and actually working with data, I realized that this was sort of the future, right? Machine learning and these sort of algorithms were slowly taking off. This was around, I think 2015, 16. But, I was initially just an econ major. I wanted to be an economist, actually. And that summer really changed a lot for me because I realized the power of A/B testing and sort of, figuring out what customers/students wanted just by seeing the way they were interacting with things, what they were clicking on, how much time they were spending on it, how often they sort of logged in, things like that, which made me really realize that it's so exciting unlocking stories and all this treasure from data. So actually after that, I stacked up a stats degree, on top of my econ degree. And then so that made me a little bit more technical, took some CS classes, learned more about technology because it's important. And in the next summer is actually a data analytics intern on Amazon's, economist team. So that was a summer that I learned a lot. I learned R and SQL from scratch, learned how to code without much of a background, and actually built one of the company's newest demand estimation, time series models. And that's what gave me the confidence that, I had that sort of, technical background, maybe not an engineering background, but technical, where I could really work with cross-functional teams to solve problems. And from there, I started applying for APM programs. I had a really big decision, sort of the first difficult decision in my career was I had a return offer from Amazon. I loved the company. I was really excited by, getting to choose whichever team I wanted to be on for the next summer. And of course, there's Prime and all these really cool things that were coming up. But I had 2 weeks to decide, and I actually, ended up not taking the offer and actually interviewing at other places. And my parents thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy too for the first few months. And then it was like basically 6 months of crazy interviewing, left and right, not just for product, but also for analytics, data science stuff. And that's something that I really recommend for anybody trying to break into this field, right? Like, as Philip, as you said, like Salesforce has like a maybe below 0.1 admit rate, right? Like all the other APM programs, you can't put all your eggs into one basket. Be a little careful about how you apply. And if this is your top shot, definitely put in more of your effort into it. But of course, have some backups and some safeties. And that was sort of, my process around it. I think that the biggest advice that I have for anyone trying to break into product is understand what product is. It really varies from company to company, from person to person. So really read as much as you can, become a product freak. Like I always tell people, if you're sitting down in a chair and it's uncomfortable, figure out, why is it uncomfortable? How would you improve it? Like really obsessively think about if, of course, like your consumer apps, Facebook and all these things, how do you improve them? What are you liking? What are you disliking about it? When you build that mindset, it really kind of naturally bakes you into doing really well in your interviews and really critiquing products. I think that's a really core thing. Of course, you can take courses, you can attend programs, and all of these things, but at the end of the day, you have to be really producty at heart. And the next quick piece of advice that I have for anybody in this field, again, is really make sure you have your story crafted. I can't, tell you how important this is. I talk about it, I'm basically like this broken record player at this point, where I will say the same thing over and over again, which is, if you want to break into product, A, understand what product's about, B, understand what the key things you need to learn in order to be good at it, and then C, shape your story around those things, right? Every company has a specific product culture. They have specific APM programs. Figure out what the main sort of characteristics are there and see how you sort of fit into that picture and be really comfortable in your own skin and understand what you bring to the table that's unique. And once you can do that, I think that will be a really sort of key play that you can have. Personally, I had a stats and econ background. I did not come from a CS background or an electrical engineering, basically like most APMs actually in the Bay Area, right? But my argument was that there's a saturation of engineers who are now PMs, and I think that's great. They bring very valuable talent and skills, but there are specific different perspectives that you can have when you have different majors and you have different outlooks on the world. And for me, I was like, I'm going to bring a very data-driven approach to understanding products. And I'm going to really bring that in as a really unique sort of indicator for me being a good PM. And of course, like, I'm pretty sure they understood that, they valued that, and that's why I'm within an APM program today.
No, I think all of that advice, a lot to unpack there, but it was all really, really solid. And I think the last piece about really trying to differentiate yourself, because at least for me, I try to look similar to everyone else, but ended up being unique because I just kept doing what I enjoyed. But no, I like that it's also good at the same time to, it's always good to do a giant internship at like Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, be a computer science major, be a TA in a class, but at that same time, just trying to differentiate yourself. So there's two questions that I really want to go into. And the first, let's just keep this brief, but one, I think what a lot of people struggle with is when you get a return offer for an internship you did, there's pros and cons to that decision, going back, like you said, you get to pick any team you want, or, taking that risk and trying to go somewhere else. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you made that decision. And then after that, what did that look like? So after you decided not to take Amazon, what did your recruiting schedule kind of look like? Did you, how much prep did you do? Did you have a plan? What did that kind of look like?
Definitely. No, I think that's definitely really loaded, but very good question, right? And sort of there are the two parts to it. One is like, what did it look like? And then two is, what did they end up doing, right? So in terms of, answering the first part of that question, right? I think that what you really need to think of when you have this really difficult decision of taking a return offer or not. And by the way, I've been on both sides, right? I took my APM internship offer at Salesforce. I took that return and ended up as a full-time APM. I did not take the Amazon return intern offer, right? I think honestly, the best thing is starting early. I think that, if you start early and you have experience early on, especially as an intern, and you have another internship ahead, like another summer ahead, that definitely gives you the one up because you can take more risks than you could for full-time positions. So just be cognizant of that. The second thing that I've been really sort of buying into this idea of is figure out in a way like what your regret factor or regret score would be. And what I mean by that is if you took one offer over trying to do something else, how much would you regret that in the future on both ends? A, if you take this offer, say at Amazon, for example, and I would have turned actually into full-time data analyst, I probably would have had a very difficult time breaking a product as a result of that. How much would I, regret having that amazing stability and that comfort, which by the way is amazing, versus, doubting myself and saying, hey, I never, took that decision. I never took that risk to try to go out there and do something. So definitely, weigh those things out. I believe for self-growth and self-improvement, you should always try to jump into uncomfortable things, but of course, be a little careful. For me, as an intern, it was fared a little better than for full-time. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second thing is once I ended up, choosing this path for myself, I definitely had a plan in mind. I wouldn't say it's like the most, well thought out and well sketched out plan, but I knew that I would really regret it if I didn't take the next bet. So I basically made this huge list of companies, within analytics, within data science, within product that I really cared about, that I had a network with, different friends who worked in these areas, ideally in those roles, PMs in those places, analysts in those places. And I basically went on this huge recruiting spree. I tried my best. I was very careful with how I spent my time. And again, this is a very common trade-off you have to go through, right? As I said, don't just only apply to APM programs. At the same time, if you're not just applying APM programs, there are things that you have to learn to break into product. The things you also have to learn and hone in better if you had an internship there last summer, right? So for analytics, I had to learn a lot less. For data science, I had to learn a little bit more. So the question was, how was I sort of able to grapple with that? And I think that, what I basically did is I made a very, rigid schedule. I tried my best to follow this structure and to just keep hustling, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's cold emailing people. I think that's the best thing you can do is just keep hustling and again, keep introspecting. So I guess that would be sort of my advice based on this. But yeah, Philip, good question. Very difficult decision. I'm happy in hindsight it worked out, but had it not, would have been kind of a different but interesting story.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people tend to overstress is that I think even if you had, went to work somewhere else junior year and then say wanted to go back to that position at Amazon full time, I think it'd be really have been easy for you to, just reach out to your manager at your internship or other people on your team to reestablish that, communication line and possibly break back into that role. So now, one thing that I think a lot of people really stress about is mock interviews and answering the PM interview. Because I remember the first time my friend ever told me, it's design a phone for a blind person. I was like, how do you do that? So can you talk a little bit about your experience just prepping for interviews in terms of behavioral and product interviews, and then technical as well?
Yeah. So first things first, I would say by cracking the PM interview, I personally think that's the holy grail of product. What a brilliant book. It gives you an intro into what product is, which was, the first thing, if you remember, that I told you, which is understand what product is about. Gail does a really good job, again, of sort of breaking it down into different companies. Like, understand that it's not, product has many different, you can be a platform PM, you can be a growth PM, you could be at a consumer company, you could be an enterprise, could be a small, large. There's so many things that sort of impact, and of course the teams, even within those entities, that impact the experience that you're going to have. But broadly, they do a good job of summarizing what product is, like the 4 stages of the life cycle. I think that's a very key part. So when it came to, behavioral interviews and design and estimation and all of that, I first started behavioral, but of course, make sure you have enough time, right? So behavioral had to do with a lot of introspection again, right? It was about looking at my experience, crafting my story, thinking about who I am, what problems I want to solve, why I'm uniquely equipped to solve them, things like that. And, of course, talking to a bunch of people in these areas. Because at the end of the day, like for your interviews, you're going to have, your first round, which is sort of your recruiter screen. And then what they're mostly going to check for is why that company, they're going to look for those things. And of course, things within your behavioral, tell me about yourself, very common sorts of questions. So make sure that you have those done pretty solidly. And again, in a unique manner, right? If someone says, why do you want to be at, Google for the APM program? Don't say because it's Google and I use Google. Like, that's very obvious, right? Really think about unique aspects that you really care about. For Salesforce specifically, it was the mission and values. I really cared that, we had something called the 1-1-1 model, where we gave back in terms of philanthropy of like 1% of our time and resources and product and all that stuff. So find something that you're uniquely equipped to solve and that you care about, because that really, come across in your voice and your thoughts. When it came down to the design questions, again, as I said, you develop that mindset over time, right? I believe that it's not necessarily the best thing to just like prep through and cram through these for product interviews. I guess at the end of the day, that ends up happening because we're humans and we procrastinate a little, but try your best to start really early. If you want to do product, shameless plug, I'm the founder of Product Space, which is just this nationwide organization that helps people get into product. People join in freshman, sophomore year of college, and they learn more about product as they go on, so that they don't have to cram at the end. So these are different ways, and of course, like engage with communities, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's your personal friends and networks. Learn more from PMs at those places, because that helps you a lot, even for the design questions. Because I had good friends in different companies who were in product, and I worked really hard to mature those relationships and to genuinely get to know them. They were really helpful when I was sort of testing out some of my interview stuff. With design questions, they gave me feedback. I'd have like mock interview prep with them. For estimation, I'd have the same. And that definitely helped me a lot when it came down to the interviews. Because what I learned was it's really enjoyable. Honestly, it's not like a coding interview where, it's not much of a conversation. This is a very open, sort of relaxed conversation environment, and that's awesome about product. Because at the end of the day, as a PM, you have to be influential. You have to know how to make friends and how to build relationships and be a very confident speaker, but also very calm person, right? Who doesn't get too caught up under stress and can sort of process things and interview well. So that was really key. And just to summarize again, craft your story, get books, read a ton online, make friends with new people, try out some of that stuff. Philip, you've done a great job with, your website, different ways, different resources online where you can learn about things and definitely do those things because that's how you're going to sort of break those numbers and break those odds.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. So now that you have your offer, you're working at Salesforce, tell us a little bit about, the culture of Salesforce and why should every person watching this video has Salesforce as their number one choice?
That's a good question. First things first, I would say that, when you're planning any APM program, be really cautious of 2 things. One is like, where's the company headed? Do you really believe in what the company is doing in terms of their mission and vision and values and things like that? And then, really understand the APM program. It's, a lot of these APM programs look very similar on the outside because they're doing the same sort of 3 key pillars, right? Like mentorship and working on high impact projects and community, but they all have different flavors. So really understand those. So to sort of unpack, Salesforce and the APM program and why I believe, at least for me, is my number one pick, and I think I really encourage other people to have this as a top pick too, is because as I said earlier, the mission and the values were really important to me, and they actually had a huge impact on the company culture. Again, the 1-1-1 model and the different things that we do, closing the gender pay gap. I think we spent like $13 million in one of the recent years to close the gender pay gap because of all the acquisitions. We had this disbalance. This is a company that really cares about these social issues. Mark Benioff, our founder and co-CEO, he does a lot of hard work on the front lines to really advocate for different topics, different, things in the legal and political system that are impacting the way things are. One of the main things we supported was Prop C recently, which causes all like major companies and corporations who are benefiting off the city of San Francisco to essentially pay higher taxes so that they can help the homeless population within the city, because it really is a huge issue. And the fact that we care about that and we stand by that is amazing. And I think for me personally, what really culminated my love for Salesforce was, because of the 1-1-1 model, we have something, we have different volunteering things, so VTO or volunteering time off, or whenever we have like our massive events where we bring in people from all over the world, from France and Germany and different parts of Asia, Japan, everything kind of coming together. The way we meet is, we have these big meetings, and then after that we go and we either clean up beaches or we feed the homeless, different ways to genuinely get to know a person, instead of just a happy hour. Of course, you have a happy hour at the end of it to have fun, but of course, it's those things that really spoke to me, and the fact that we have these deep mission and values. So that's why I think I love the company, and I think it really impacts our culture too, because we actually build products that change lives forever. So to give you a really quick rundown, as right now, as a full-time APM, I'm working on bias detection and mitigation, right? And this is something that's on the bleeding edge of technology. So A, I'm getting to work on something really cool, but B, it's also really pertinent. For example, just today, actually, Goldman Sachs was under fire for the Apple credit card, and there seems to be this massive, gender bias. There was a founder of a company who got a 20-time credit limit than his wife, and they have very comparable stats, and she actually has a higher credit score. Things like that, which are crazy, right? So the fact that this thing is getting perpetuated by AI, and that I'm part of the Einstein team that, of course, empowers admins with little to no stats and ML knowledge build predictive models. I think that's awesome. It's very cool and exciting. But at the same time, it has issues because we might be encoding different biases. Maybe people are not aware of these things. So I'm actually working on these new projects on the front lines to change that and actually help things like systemic bias, discrimination that we sort of think of, and now with AI that is getting perpetuated. So that's a way to sort of understand that what we do is we try changing the world in different ways with our products. And then finally, talking a little about the APM program, it's the inaugural year. I'm actually part of the very first batch of APMs, and I absolutely love that. Of course, there are ups and downs, like with any program, and especially in the inaugural batch, what's really exciting to me, and the reason I wanted to come to Salesforce, is because I'm able to really shape my experience. Every week or bi-weekly, we have one-on-ones with great executives in the company to learn more about how we're going to improve the program, to get more feedback on our projects, and then how we've been, feeling about our time at Salesforce. And I absolutely love that. We have a very dedicated team here who really cares. And I think the most unique thing, the biggest winning point, is actually our chief product officer, Brett Taylor, is actually the executive sponsor of the APM program. He was the second APM at Google. He was the co-creator of Google Maps. He invented the like button when he was CTO of Facebook, started Quip, jumping out of Facebook, and basically I got acquired by Salesforce, and now he's like under 40 years old, incredible powerhouse of an executive and entrepreneur, and we get to sort of meet with him, about 3 to 4 times a quarter to get that inner experience of what it's like running this company. Some recent stuff that we've been doing is we've been coming to his directs meetings, where we literally see how the people are running this $140 billion company at the front line, seeing what decisions they're making. And I think that's what just, it doesn't just hone you into a product leader, it hones you into an amazing executive. And that to me, paired with the mentorship that we're getting at Salesforce, that was by far the biggest winner that I believe that I wouldn't get anywhere else. So for those reasons, I love the company, I love what we're doing, I love my project, and I love the program, because we're really working on high impact things and changing the world in a legitimate way.
Awesome. No, I think that's a great way. And I think Salesforce has a lot of advantages, compared to other ones like Google, Microsoft, and especially it being a smaller program. So I know you have to go soon, but really quick, and let's try and keep this answer short. And I know you've given lots of advice, but what's the number one thing that you know now that you wish you knew before you had your APM offer with Salesforce?
Do you mean with respect to recruiting, or what specifically?
Anything that you think is really important. I was thinking more in mind with recruiting, but I'll leave it up to you.
I think that what I really wished I knew was understanding the difference between consumer and enterprise PM. And also understanding that intersectionality between consumer enterprise, small and large. It's really, really important for you to understand these when you're applying any APM program, because or any PM position too, more broadly, because it massively impacts the experience that you're going to have. For example, if you are interested in an APM position at Uber, right? It's very fast growing right now. They're doing very scrappy work. That'll be very different from, an enterprise grade level product experience at Salesforce. We don't move as fast, but we definitely work with more, cross-functional teams. Like this rotation, I worked with a technical writer, with an AI expert, with our legal teams to make sure that what we're sort of shipping out is very pertinent and does a good job of addressing what our company is really striving for. So just really understand that, again and again. I wish I talked to more people and understood these things better. I'm very lucky because I ended up realizing that I do love enterprise product. I do love large companies right now. Want to jump into smaller companies, maybe consumer in a bit. But yeah, be very cognizant of that. That is like the number one thing I would really recommend you understand. And that only happens when you talk to people at those companies. Even these PM programs and all these different resources is not going to teach you that. So be very cognizant, and I'm sure you're gonna nail it.
No, I couldn't agree with more with that with Soham. I had the exact same thing where it's just companies can vary so much, and especially a company like Microsoft. Like we have the Surface, we have Xbox, we have Office, and every single one of those PM roles is a little bit different for each one. But thank you again for taking the time to talk to me, and I hope this information was helpful for everyone watching.